Square cakes and rectangular cakes tend to be a little bit more difficult than round cakes to get really level and to get really sharp edges. And typically with round cakes, even if your cakes themselves aren't level, you can somewhat fix that with the buttercream. But I find when it comes to square rectangular cakes, it's actually really difficult to get a nice level final coat on it if the structure of your cake itself isn't really level and sound. So I'm just going to teach you some tips and tricks that I've learned and figured out over the years to get my cakes really nice and squared up. So I've already stacked the first 3 layers, but I want to point out that when you're trimming your cakes, I baked a full sheet cake and I trimmed up 4 smaller 5x6 rectangles. So it's almost a square, but it's off by an inch. Anyways, I trimmed 4 5x6 rectangles out of a full sheet cake. And when you're trimming your cakes, you want to make sure I always use a ruler. Even if I used a square pan, I want to use a ruler to make sure that I'm getting really straight edges. And even if maybe one corner of your cake stuck to the pan when it was baking and another corner didn't, it can be uneven. So I always use a ruler to make sure that they're nice and straight and you've got 90-degree angles. Also, even if your cake looks really flat when it bakes, the caramelization on top, you still want to cut the crown of your cake off and level the top of your cake, no matter what. Like I said, even if it looks really flat, always level your cake. And when you're stacking them, you want to make sure that you're getting them lined up perfectly. And I'm just going to show you how to put the last layer on and how I do it to make sure that the whole cake is really nice and structured. So when I'm putting my buttercream on, just going to put enough to fill my layer or close to it. But when I'm pushing this out to the edges, I'm not worried about it going out over the edge at all. Actually, that's great because then I can just use that for my crumb coat, all this extra frosting. But I want to push it out until I have one nice, even, flat layer of buttercream that's at least the size of the cake itself. And what I mean by that is when I'm pushing this buttercream out, I'm pushing it out, but wherever the cake is, I want my buttercream to be flat, especially on the corners, because on square cakes, the corners are what's really difficult. And if you aren't getting enough buttercream in your corners, they're going to droop, and it's going to be really difficult to get that final coat on there. So you're really making sure that you are pushing it completely out to the edges and getting it really nice and flat and built up on those corners. And if it's not completely flat and it doesn't seem like it's working, you can also take the edge of your spatula and just sort of bring that edge back up a little bit with your spatula and pull it back. And that's going to bring the level of your buttercream back up. And there you can see now I've really flattened that corner out. Just to show you that again. I'm pushing my buttercream out over the edge and my corner's not nice. I'm taking this buttercream and I'm bringing it back up and pulling in. And that's giving me a nice flat surface there. So you're just going to make sure that it's all filled in and flattened out. If you feel like it's not, then fix it. Fix it now, and your future self will thank your past self. I'm just giving this a couple swipes over to really smooth it out. just like that. And then I'm ready for my next layer of cake. And so when you're ready for the next layer of cake, you can see I've already got this other nice layer. It's perfectly trimmed up to the size of this, and it's really nice and flat. I just have it on a little piece of board. Just want to get it off. And you want to look down over the top of your cake and just make sure that you're lining up all your edges and that it's nice and square, and turn it. It really helps if you do this on a turntable. Turn it, and if you have to, gently nudge your cake over a little bit to get it all lined up. That's okay. There you go. And you can see it's pretty level. My corners aren't sagging. I don't have any dips anywhere in the cake. My edges are really nice, and this cake is ready for a crumb coat.